Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast will contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews of newly released films, please check out our channel Reviews Without Remorse on YouTube and VidMe. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show. Welcome to episode 34 of Reviews Without Remorse. My buddy and I are Joe and Dave. What's happening, my buddy Dave? What's going on?
My buddy and I, Joe and Dave. That sounds weird. It's like you're saying you're your own buddy, and then there's Dave.
and then there's Dave. On today's episode, we will do a quick little follow-up to our discussion on the Orville and Star Trek Discovery. The trailer for Pacific Rim 2 just dropped, and every time I say that, I feel like I'm saying it wrong. The Justice League dropped another trailer. We'll touch on it. Some troubling news from the Marvel small screen universe. The Punisher got backed up. We'll talk about it. And then Dave and I will discuss our topic for today, Blade Runner 2046.
49.
49. Oh, I knew I was going to get that wrong. I don't think I've gotten that right this entire season, actually.
Sir, I wish to request a leave of absence.
For what reason?
I have laid an egg.
What do you mean, like it told a bad joke or something? Like,
So, who jumped the shark and who has surprised the ever-living hell out of you?
Out of me? Well, I'll tell you this. Yeah, it was funny because where we left off on that little discussion, I said, well, Discovery. I was trying to sort of play devil's advocate and kind of give it the benefit of the doubt and say, well, I'm willing to see where it goes. After I saw the first two, I watched the third episode and decided that was it. I'm done. The whole thing is so, again, it's just so, the first two, again, forget about the fact that it just took all of Star Trek canon and turned it upside down, didn't feel anything like a Star Trek show, and seemed to know nothing about the history, the real history of the show, or at least not in depth. But, everyone just seems so stupid on this show. Like, one can...
dour. And so dour. Like, everything is such a tragedy.
Right. Everything is serious and tough and whatever. That. But but that doesn't even bother me. If that's what they want to give us, I'll give it a shot, whatever. But everybody just seems so stupid. Like, it seems like no one on the show is thinking past the next chess move. They're only thinking one chess move at a time. And with every move, it just seems stupider and stupider. Basically, the third one opened up where they're taking, she's now life in prison. Okay, well, all right, fine, whatever. I'm saying to myself, why would they give her life in prison for what she did? It didn't seem that bad, and it did seem like her heart was in the right place. You'd think they would take that into some consideration. I guess not. But
Mutiny cannot be tolerated in Starfleet.
I know, but I don't know. I don't know. But
I am not defending the show by any stretch of the imagination. Please continue.
No. Well, hey, it's a valid. I'm dying for somebody to give me a valid reason for something. But even when they're transporting, and then the little thing happens, and apparently the driver can't handle it without getting flown, just flying out of the ship and flying away. They get rescued by a starship. The prisoners get trotted in, and of course, everybody is written so one-dimensionally, where it's like, oh, we're gonna have to take the trash on board, like these no good, rotten prisoners. Okay, fine. Then they take them into the mess hall to eat, right? No shackles, no nothing. No one is, and again, like they're sitting with the rest of the crew of the ship. They just let them do what they please, roam around and go get your food and sit down, not thinking that something could happen, which is exactly what did happen, where a fight breaks out. Again, you'd be concerned that they would have a fight with either a crew member or each other. Sure enough, a fight breaks out. Like, you couldn't have seen that coming. Again, like, no one's thinking. No one is using their head at all. So I'm like, you know what? I could care less. And then they get into the actual plot. I was like, you know what? I just don't care. I like the spores and the other. That seems so, like, somehow these flowers are going to create jet propulsion. No, I'm not buying it at all, so don't even bother me with it.
Yeah, you know what's funny is there is kind of a scientific theory about it, but I mean, it's way the hell out there, number one. And number two, why isn't the Enterprise using this? If this is a prequel, why aren't all future starships using this? Obviously, something bad is going to happen that's going to completely negate the use of this drive at some point.
Right. Yeah, I don't, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, like I said, nothing about the first two made any sense, and all I said was I'm willing to just give it the benefit of the doubt and give it another shot, and nothing about this one, it just seemed to get worse and worse. Like, no, forget it. I mean, none of the people are interesting. It's just so stupid. All one-dimensional.
If the writers put in a quarter of the effort that the effects crew is putting in, this would be a great show.
Right, seriously. My Kingdom, the whole thing for one decent script, yeah. I mean, and I'm watching a couple episodes now. And again, for something that is supposed to be so complex, right? This is really deep and thought-provoking and complex, and no one is thinking past the second chess move. And that's what's driving me crazy. At every move, you're watching this saying, well, that doesn't make sense. And again, you're waiting for them to sort of redeem themselves. Maybe there's a reason for it, because it just seems so stupid. Nope. Nothing was redeemed. It just got dumber and dumber, and I said, nah, I'm done. I could care less about it.
On the other hand, there is the SS Orville.
We have figured out a way to manipulate the speed of events.
So, it's an anti-banana ray.
It's really interesting.
We need no longer fear the banana.
Does it work on all fruit?
What about salads?
The Orville, I tell you what, and that's the one I watched. I'm up to the 5th show now. I've watched 5 episodes so far.
Which there were only 5, so you saw the one with Charlize Theron.
I did. Yeah, that was the last one I saw. And I tell you what, they just got better and better, as opposed to the other one that just, I could, whatever. This one, I was really enjoying the hell out of it. And I felt like the last time we talked, I saw the first 3, and I really enjoyed the first 3. And I said, if this is an indication of what's to come, I could just see it getting better. And it did. And again, I felt like this is, I mean, the stories are simpler. They're simple, standalone stories, as opposed to this crap on Discovery. This to me is traditional Star Trek. If you were a fan of the first series, the original series, this is
and the
absolutely
Next Generation
for you.
as well. And the Next Generation as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the comparisons to Next Generation and Voyager, and you know, if you like these shows, I think this one is the one that you will like. Again, the characters are interesting. We're all kind of getting to know them little by little. The adventures, the individual episodes are interesting, just thought-provoking enough, you know, without beating you over the head with anything. I thought it was terrific. I mean, I'm really enjoying them all. I really, honest to God, and I'm not just saying this, the feeling you get watching this, like, I mean, it's not that long ago when the original series just hit Netflix not long ago, and I was watching it with the improved effects and everything, just watching a couple episodes at a time in one sitting, you know, I felt like watching a couple episodes of The Orville had that same sort of a feeling. So
100%.
Honest to God, I mean, I really, that familiarity of watching each one, watching what's coming next, and just, you know, what's around the next corner, and just enjoying them as individual episodes, that same feeling was there. I tell you, I mean, I'm pretty amazed by it.
I honestly would have liked it better if the people working on Star Trek, if they had just created their own thing and not built in a Star Trek universe. They took the yoke of the name Star Trek and they're bending it so hard that they wind up not appealing to anybody. Because they're trying to keep things relatively in Star Trek lore to satisfy the fans, but also try to bring in the new fans by being gritty and all that stuff.
Right.
And it's the two aren't mixing. Maybe they did it standalone as a different type of series, they probably could have pulled it off. Star Trek Discovery is Star Trek in name only. The Orville is Star Trek in style.
And spirit. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah. The Orville to me is a show that has heart and soul. I really feel like it's got the heart of Star Trek. I mean, it really does.
I am 3 episodes. I'm now 4 episodes into Discovery. Yes, I've watched the latest one. They had the tiniest glimmer of Star Trek in it. Not enough for me to recommend you watch it, but just the tiniest glimmer. Okay.
Yeah.
I am up to the 4th episode. I still only have one favorite character, the tall frickin' alien. That's it.
Yeah,
Everybody else can bite me. Whereas on the Orville, I haven't found a character I dislike, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, they're all great, and even the character you're talking about, the guy from Discovery, I thought he was just okay. I mean, frankly, I thought he was basically C-3PO, kind of. It was like a combination of C-3PO and somebody else, whatever, Data maybe. He was okay. He was okay. He looked good, and he had some personality. Like, I mean, if you had to describe the personalities of the others, I'm kind of hell bent to do that. But yeah, and I should mention that you offered me this week. Oh, by the way, I got the 4th Discovery, and I was like, no. And you're like, you sure you want to? I'm like, no. Like, I honestly, the third one I was so put off by it. I said, no, I'm done.
Well, then hopefully we can close the book on Star Trek Discovery for now. I think verdict has been rendered. I don't think anything needs to. I feel like any more that we mention about it is giving them more press than they deserve.
We were born into a world at war. Between the monsters that destroyed our cities and the monsters we created to stop them, we thought we had sacrificed enough.
And speaking of empty calorie sci-fi, well, actually, have you seen the first Pacific Rim?
I have not, no. And honestly, I know very little about it, to be honest with you. I mean, this is a big one that just somehow was never on my radar, so I just never bothered with it.
The conceit is basically giant robots versus giant monsters. It's 60s, 70s Japanese horror movie kitsch type thing.
Right.
But it was directed by Guillermo del Toro. And the first one, it's not a great flick, but it is a fun flick. Mm-hmm. And it's done really, really well. And I enjoyed it. My kid loves it. It's got this amazing soundtrack by the guy who does the Game of Thrones and Westworld soundtrack. And it had really good performances. It was a fun flick. Don't expect high art or anything like that. Just fun. And this is the sequel that we're talking about, Pacific Rim Uprising. Now, Del Toro isn't doing it. It's being directed by Stephen S. DeKnight, and he actually worked on the first season of Daredevil on Netflix. That was his big thing. And it doesn't have a lot of the original cast back. It has John Boyega playing the son of the main character from one of the main characters from the first movie. Charlie Day is back as Newton Geisler. Bern Gorman is back as Herman Gottlieb. And Rinko Kikuchi, excuse me, I can't say that name very well. She's back as Mako, and everything else is brand new. And this is supposed to be like maybe 20 years after the end of the Jaeger Kaiju Wars. And that's what they're called. The monsters are called Kaijus, and the robots are called Jaegers.
Okay. I mean, yeah, the concept is fine. I mean, honestly, when I first saw the commercials for it the first time around, I was like, "Oh, is this another Transformers?" But it was like, "No, it's something different." I'm like, okay. I'm gonna guess that
wishes it was as good as the first Pacific Rim. Seriously,
even the first Transformers.
All the Transformers.
Okay.
Any of the Transformers. Pacific Rim is easily better than any of them, and I've put it up on your queue. You can watch it if you get a chance.
All right, maybe I'll check it out then. I'll give it a shot. And that's actually a pretty reasonable little.
Just go in. It's fun. Just remember that it's just go and have fun. Don't pick it apart, because if you pick it apart, you're not going to enjoy it. It's just meant to be fun. You know?
It's giant robots fighting giant monsters. Fine. Okay.
But the new trailer, I'm not 100% sure about the new trailer. I kind of like the idea. They are expanding. Del Toro had said that if they did a sequel, his idea was, well, what happens to the Jaegers if there's no more monsters to fight? They have this incredible technology. What happens? And from the looks of the trailer, it looks like before the Kaijus come back, there's wars going on, and they're fighting wars with the Jaegers. And it isn't until the Kaijus come back that then they just band together and go after them. That's what the trailer is giving me.
Okay.
And I kind of like that they're expanding on that concept, and I'm very curious to see where it goes. It has the style of it. I mean, the only thing I'm not particularly impressed with, like, most of the reviews of the first movie all said that all the fights always take place in the dark. And I kind of feel like there's a reason for that, because when they're in the dark, everything looks better. You can cover up a lot of the shortcomings of the fact that this is CGI and stuff like that in a darkened setting. Because when they showed the Jaegers in the daytime during the trailer, all I could think of is, oh God, that doesn't really look right. I hope they fix that.
Okay.
Nothing more to say, huh?
Like I said, I know nothing about it. I mean, I saw the trailer for this one, and honestly, pretty much right out of the gate, it was like disaster porn already. So I was like, all right, here we go, another building's falling down, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I'm just kind of numb to it. If they can put a creative spin on it, like you said, I mean, that's a pretty good recommendation that you gave me. I'll give the first one a shot and check it out.
I'll take that as a yes.
What?
The Ring.
Justice League.
Yeah, the Justice League, another trailer. Okay, and the only thing I noticed with this one, I mean, there was a couple things that were new, and I'm starting to feel like, we're probably already going to start to get too much from these trailers, but aside from the new shot of Superman, which, again, may or may not be leading up to his return, who knows, it was only a dream, whatever.
Oh, for God's sakes, he's coming back. Jesus, don't even...
It's just a matter of when. It's a matter of when and how. The thing I noticed watching this trailer is that they seemed to be trying to put the saturation back into the color. I noticed it was a little
more
colorful.
bright
color. Yeah, a little more bright color with this one. They're kind of getting it. I guess they're trying. I see somebody's trying something here. But 2 seconds into the trailer, I hear, "Oh right," I'm like, "Oh geez, here we go."
Okay, see, two things in this trailer that bothered me. I actually enjoyed the trailer. This is the first time I really enjoyed a trailer of the Justice League. The first thing that I like, I want to point this out. I felt that the opening 30 seconds or 15 seconds of that trailer with Lois waking up in Smallville and seeing Clark in the field and stuff like that had more heart than Man of Steel and Batman v Superman put together. That 15 seconds had more heart.
Sure.
Okay? So I appreciate that. I like that. And I thought the rest of the trailer was fine, was serviceable. And there's not much more we're going to know about this movie until the time comes. I'm still not a big fan of, here comes Steppenwolf, and he's obviously this giant CGI character. It's really hard to get over. But they threw in a couple of nice little beats for each of the characters to do and everything, which was cool. Problem number one, and the second thing isn't even a problem, more of an observation. But problem number one, I'm calling it right now. People are going to love Mr. Dude Bro Aquaman, but I think he's going to start grading after a while.
Like I said before, this is either going to be a home run or it's going to be a real embarrassment because they are really, again, they are going full force, hardcore with this. Oh right,
my man.
Oh jeez, I'm like, I mean, I'm already like just way past rolling my eyes on it. So yeah, you're right. It's we'll see about that.
That's a tiny worry. The other thing I noticed was the end, the end of the trailer. Now, most trailers, when they come to the end, they have the technical credits. Notice that there were none of those at the end of this. So we don't have a writer's credit. We don't have a director's credit. You have to wonder if that's one of those things that's still being negotiated with the various unions in Hollywood. How much has Joss Whedon replaced? Joss Whedon has already gotten a screenplay credit, which is huge. That almost never happens with somebody who does a rewrite. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where the power shift goes. If Joss Whedon winds up taking over the DC Cinematic Universe, it honestly would be the best thing for it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. He would definitely. I mean, again, for a guy who did the event. I mean, in some ways, Joss Whedon would be for superhero movies what J.J. Abrams has become for all of the science fiction franchises.
Well, let's not push it that far. I'm not completely convinced J.J. Abrams is like the end all be all for both Star Trek and Star Wars. But
I'm not calling him. I'm not calling him the be all end all. I'm just saying at this point of the game. I mean, he's basically the helmsman for the Star Trek reboot as well as the Star Wars reboot and into Episode 9. So Joss Whedon would go from Avengers 1 and 2 to now the DC Justice League. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. Yes. Now I get your analogy, and now the analogy works. Cool. But all told, a tiny little bit more confidence than before. I still think it's going to be a crap show, but that's just me.
Yeah, I like I said before, I mean, the first trailer I was laughing at. The second one I said, now that's a little better. And if you had done that the first time around, I would have been a little more open-minded to it, let's say. I didn't really feel like I got much more with this one. And I feel like this is going to be their take on the Avengers, more or less. And we'll just see how it goes. I really, like you said, they, had this all gone according to plan with, Zack Snyder at the helm with no changes, I would have just said, forget it, shitfest, garbage. Now you got Joss Whedon, and it's looking more and more like he's probably got more and more involvement with it. So at this stage of the game, I'll roll the dice. I absolutely can't tell you, is it going to be I mean, it's not going to be great. I am not expecting anything great. Maybe serviceable, somewhere between serviceable and shitstorm. Is what I'm predicting.
It's kind of sad that that's the barometer for how things need to be with this movie in order for us to like it.
What do you know about my family?
In other news, in very unfortunate news.
Oh, you son of a motherless goat. You poop eating, crap shitting dickwad.
Yeah, because of some no good piece of shit, excuse my language.
We'll be bleeping a lot of this, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, is the S word okay? I don't know. I know. You got to bleep the F word. I don't know if the S word gets by.
I don't know. Who cares? We'll figure it out.
Right.
But yes, because, as you said, of some piece of shit, some low-life, scum-sucking piece of shit with nothing better to do with his life than end it while taking out as many as he can as he goes.
I mean, I almost hesitate to even draw this parallel because I'm saying I like a lot bigger problems in the world than this one. But since we talk about movies, we talk about comic book movies, because of that, the Punisher show has been delayed. And again, they never had announced a date anyway. They were sort of doing that as a little surprise, which was sort of interesting.
The rumor was they were originally going to have it released like within 2 weeks.
Yeah,
it was originally supposed to release in October, and now it's looking like it's going to be November. Like they were talking like it was going to be October 20th.
Oh, see, I thought it might have even been even later, but who knows? And I find it to be sort of a strange little anomaly, like, you know, the fact that you are going to push this forward out of respect for what happened. It's sort of like you're making a connection between this and that, and I kind of feel like, is that the right way to go? I don't know, but I guess, look, at the end of the day, if you feel like there may be a connection somebody would draw, then sure, then do what you got to do and push it forward, I suppose.
Well,
but
here's the way I look at it: if they actually show when Frank's family gets gunned down, I can kind of see them being a little bit sensitive about that, because that's a mass shooting in the middle of Central Park with guns just blazing into a crowd of people. So I can kind of sort of see them being a little bit sensitive to that.
Fair enough. Yeah, like I said, I mean, if they know what, right? I don't know what it's going to be yet. So if they feel like somebody's going to draw a parallel and say, hey guys, that was a little insensitive, you know what? Then fair enough. Just push it up a little bit. But it's
at least they didn't say canceled. There you
go. I could definitely see that the advertising might start to fall back a little bit. You know, for all I know, we probably won't see the trailer between now and they'll just release it. But whatever. Like I said, I'm looking forward to the show regardless. It's fiction. I hate that they have to sort of draw parallels between that and real life and draw connections. But
it happens. It's going to happen. Whether it's a positive or a negative, it's always going to happen.
Right.
Sometimes it's right in your face, but other times, yeah.
There is an order to things.
That's what we do here. We keep order.
30 years after the events of the first film, a new Blade Runner, LAPD Officer K, Ryan Gosling, unearths a long-buried secret that has the potential to plunge what's left of society into chaos. K's discovery leads him on a quest to find Rick Deckard, Harrison Ford, a former LAPD Blade Runner who has been missing for 30 years. Written by Hampton Fisher and Michael Green, directed by Denis Villeneuve. I'm going to ask that you start.
You asked that I start. Oh boy, I was hoping you were going to start.
You want me to start? Okay, fine. I'm going to go right into it then. You want me to get right into it? I will get right into it.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to start with some positives. The dude gets the look and the aesthetic of Blade Runner to a T. The movie absolutely positively looked like a sequel to Blade Runner. Like 30 years had passed and all that other stuff. It had the feel of it, had the look of it. He even had the guy doing the music in the same style and everything like that.
Agreed. I like that Atari and Pan Am are still thriving in the future. In this future,
in that alternative timeline of the future.
Yeah, I will give you that. I did feel that there was a lot more emphasis on the more bleaker aspects of that future world, and it was interesting. It was almost like I walked out feeling like they nailed it perfectly, yet somehow it was almost like I thought this was more fitting of an Alien movie than a Blade Runner movie, but which in itself is sort of a contradiction, because last week I just talked about how they both seem like similar worlds and stuff, and they seem to fit together. I almost feel like they went more Alien than Blade Runner in this. But I mean, but what you said is absolutely correct. I mean, he did touch on that perfectly. I felt like at the end of the day, when the sum total seemed to sort of focus a lot more on that bleakness than I thought the first one had.
That's probably just a product of our current environment with this idea that sci-fi needs to be bleak.
True. Yeah, very true.
As Star Trek Discovery has shown you.
Yeah.
But this is where it starts to get bad. First of all, well, you know what? I got to do one more positive thing. I felt that this movie actually had a better plot than the first Blade Runner, in the respect that this was now the first Blade Runner and this Blade Runner was supposed to be a detective story, and yet there wasn't a lot of detecting actually done by Deckard, except for that scene for like 20 minutes where he's enhance.
Enhance 224 to 176. Enhance. Stop. Center and pull back. Stop. Enhance 34 to 36.
You know?
Yeah.
That was like the big detective scene. I kind of felt like the detectiveness of Officer K was actually on display. Like, he found clues and it led him here and it led him here. I thought that was good. I thought that the plot was okay. You know, just like the first one. Another good thing about this movie is it proves to me beyond the shadow of a doubt, the scene where the replicant is born, the Nexus 9 is born.
Yes.
And Jared Leto's looking it over, trying to decide, you know, if this is the right one, and then he guts it. That scene showed me that Jared Leto could play a heck of a Joker if he had the right damn script.
Yeah, I like that scene too. It's funny you mentioned that one because that one stuck out in my mind as well. I particularly love the imagery of where it just drops and falls. It looks like if you saw like a horse or a cow give birth to a calf, where they're looking fully grown with legs and stuff, and and they sort of just drop as like a big saggy tangled mess, you know, and then they slowly stand up. I thought the imagery there was very interesting. That was very well done. And then, yeah, like you said, then he stands it up, looks it over, and just kind of guts it like an animal. Yeah, it was very interesting imagery. The visuals, I totally agree with you, were very fascinating. Nothing was careless. Everything seemed very much on purpose, very intentional,
very very in line with how the first Blade Runner was.
I would say so for the most part. I mean, I think you can watch them pretty much more or less in a row and not feel disappointed. In that respect, yeah. And that's
a rare thing, especially when you've changed directors between movies. It's not you very rarely get the same look and feel of a movie and its sequel when you've changed directors, especially at 40 years apart. But somehow they managed.
Yeah, I agree. And especially, too, right, like you said, when the special effects are 30 years later, it takes a lot of restraint not to get carried away and start doing crazy things that you couldn't have done back then. You know,
I'm not going to complain about the special effects either. I thought that they were utilized perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought the visuals were very good. So, now that we've covered that thoroughly.
The plot. Okay, so while I like that they finally did a detective story, oh, my God. Okay, first of all, we get it. We got it. Okay, we got that when he went to the orphanage, the minute I saw those kids with the shaved heads, I was like, that's where the memory comes from. Mm-hmm. Okay, knew that right to bat. And yet, it still took 10 minutes of slow walking down the hall shots of him walking down the stairs and walking through to get to that one boiler where the horse with 61021 was located.
Right.
Okay, the plotting. The movie was like 2 hours and 30 minutes. And for God's sakes, you could have easily cut 20 minutes of useless, just, I don't know, establishing or walking or whatever. It moved so slow at some points.
Yeah.
Just plotting, so tedious. I remember when he was walking down the stairs as I was watching the movie. He's walking down the stairs and he realizes that this is the boiler. This is where his memory of being beaten up by those kids trying to protect the horse happened.
Right.
And I remember thinking to myself, like from Monty Python's Holy Grail.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
Get on with it.
Yeah.
And that was me. I was sitting there like, oh my God, just get the hell on with it.
And we sat here last week praising how I said I liked the slow, you know, there was it took its time and whatever, and I liked it. Yeah, I think that he picked up on that too, but just overdid it a little bit,
a little too slow. If Blade Runner was second gear, 2049 is first gear. Potentially somewhere between first gear and reverse.
Yeah. There's slow burn, and then there's this. I agree with you. Go ahead.
And okay, and then there's the plot itself. And you know what? There's no way I can save this. There's no way. And I'm spoiler alert. This is my Who Asked You. Pregnant replicants? Pregnant replicants? What?
Well, yeah. That's there you go. And you know what popped into my head at some point during this film? I was having a lot of flashbacks of The Matrix Reloaded, where they kind of took what they did in the first one and took it to the next level here. It was familiar. I was reminded of that, because of the sort of over-the-top storyline where you took what you established in the first one and now doubled down in the second one to get even more carried away. Also, in just a lot of plot exposition, a lot of talking, a lot of like the scene in Matrix Revolutions of him talking to the architect, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. I felt like there was a lot of that in here, too. But yeah, again, I said in the last one, I said that there was it's call it a plot hole or not, but they've built replicants that are so human-like that even humans can't figure out if they are people or not. And I'm saying to myself, well, why would they do that? Why would that be? And I guess the point is, at some point, see, it's almost like, remember when we talked about Westworld? And I said, at some point I was waiting for the twist to happen where they said that they had to use actual human DNA or something to achieve that lifelike, that almost human lifelike persona in the robots, whatever. Mm-hmm. I was sort of getting that here too, thinking like, well, this must be the point, is that they're so human-like that they are essentially humans, and they're whatever little chip we put in them to make them different or whatever is starting to break down, and now the natural tendency to want to reproduce, like the Jurassic Park line, nature finds a way. I was thinking that's where they were going with this, but they didn't say that, so yeah, we're left with robots that are having babies. I'm sort of baffled. I mean, unless you were going to tell me that, yes, at some point they used human beings to create replicants, and replicants have human characteristics in their bones and blood to be able to procreate, but they don't say that. So yeah, I'll just say it, I don't get it.
They chalked it up to a miracle. It's funny because when they pointed out, when he found the serial number on the bones that they found, and I realized, oh god, it's a replicant having babies. This is where they're going. And you were the first person I thought of, because I said to myself, now Joe's question makes sense to me. Now Joe's question of why are they making them look as human as possible? And to the point that even humans can't tell them apart. And now that plot hole has stuck into my head.
Yeah, I mean,
the other thing that got to me with that scene, when that happened, that was the end of the movie for me. I'm very serious. It's funny that the trailer talks about... Remember the trailer, how I complained in the trailer when Robin Wright said, this breaks the world? And I'm like, oh my god, why does it always have to be about the world? Uh-huh. Funnily enough, she was right, but not in the way that she thought. That broke the Blade Runner world for me. It just broke it.
Yeah.
It broke it for me, because I said to myself, no, there is... I don't care how brilliant you are. To give one tiny little bit of conceit, I really appreciate that they still kept whether Deckard was a replicant or not vague.
Yes, I thought that as well. Yeah, go ahead.
I appreciated that, and I wanted to call it out, and I figured you would also... we could talk more about that in a minute, but I just wanted to call it out. So, because now, here's the situation. Because they've kept that vague, now, you're telling me that Tyrell was such a genius that he came up with a way for a replicant to do a form of sperm that can go into a replicant form of ovum and get together, or that it could be, if Deckard in the end is still human, now it's a human replicant kind of hybrid type situation. There's so much of that science makes zero sense and has no basis in reality.
Here's my theory, and like I said, it's almost like, the movie doesn't tell you. So even if somebody comes back later and says, "Oh yeah, we meant all along for the idea that there are human DNA in there, and that's what we were trying to hide all along," that's not in the movie. So I'm still sitting here judging on just what they gave us. My theory is, look, the only explanation to me is that in they're trying to achieve human-like robots. They used human DNA to actually create a semi-lifelike or a semi-living thing, sentient being that has DNA, and that's the only explanation for this.
Yeah, I would have accepted that if they had come up with that explanation.
Right, but they don't say as much. And I just sort of say to myself, like, well, that's what you should have said. I mean, I don't know why they don't. I mean, in the world today of cloning, and I mean, that to me is a world of possibility that they could have explored. And here's the thing. I mean, they never do, as far as I can remember, they never actually cut open a replicant. Like, they've never actually, again, for all that trying to figure out if this one is a replicant or not, again, they can't do blood tests. They can't do some very simple testing, right? They have to just sort of trick it to see if it gets excited or not, or who knows. But again, they never just draw blood. They never just cut it open to look inside. I mean, if there's wires or something inside, then obviously it's a robot. They never do that. So, I mean, again, the way I interpret that is there's no point to even drawing blood. There's no point in cutting it open. And even here, they show you the remains. I mean, there's bones. I mean, decaying bones. So I'm at the point where, I mean, seriously, if you dig up a body, right, and there's decaying bones and nothing else, and all you're finding is a little inscription with the number on it, I'm looking at this saying, okay, look, all I'm seeing is a person. I mean, to the point, again, it's dead, it's decayed. The body has decayed exactly the way a body would, and had you not just gone in with a microscope and found that little number, there's nothing that separates what you're looking at from a person. So then explain to me then how is this bag of bones in a coffin supposed to be technology in any way? It's just a person.
Exactly. And in fact, you've just even proven the point even more, because the serial number. This, you know, if this is something, if like they had that big scene, the birthing scene, okay, where it comes out of the giant plastic bag and slams onto the floor.
Yeah.
If you're trying to say that replicants are born, not built, you know, and they are kind of a human hybrid and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay,
then the serial number is kind of a glaring error. Then how do you get a serial number inside something that is grown?
You're right. Yeah.
You know, it's you know, so clear right there. And the newer ones have this thing. The one thing that they kept saying is look up, because it seems like the way that to find out if they're replicant is to look at the white parts of their iris of their eyes now, and there's a way of knowing that they're replicants that way, quick and easy. How do you put that there? Okay, now let's go conversely. Does that mean that they can grow old? Do they have the ability to start growing old and decay? What kind of technology are they using? Is it synthetic human, synthetic life? Is it a combination? It doesn't make any sense. And not to mention, the whole conceit now with the pregnant replicant is that this is it. We're going to be able to make ourselves. It's like, I don't think so. This is an anomaly. This is probably just Rachel. You're kind of holding on to this hope that this is going to be the big thing that takes all replicants to the new level. It's not going to be you. Wallace is the only one that's going to be able to utilize it.
Yeah, I guess.
How are the robots supposed to? What are they going to do? They're gonna. It's just everybody's going to gangbang frickin' his daughter, you know, because she's the only one that could probably get pregnant. I mean, come on.
See, yeah. I mean, you know, it's funny. You know, just to take a step back, I mean, you know, this for me was a very, very hard movie to sort of discern and decide like what I thought about it. And I resisted the urge to watch all the other reviews. And I'm actually dying to listen to the other reviews. I'm dying to hear what other people have said about this film, but I did not, because I wanted my take to be fresh and not tainted or whatever. But yeah, I walked out of this film not knowing what to make of it. And
same here.
I really did sort of have this, like I said, like, I mean, again, even if you think about it, go back to the first one, the guy who was Sebastian, who was the toy maker. He had the toys, and basically, now if he's actually building these robots, then that flies at the face of what I'm getting from this film. Because again, see, and I also remember I said that I liked the idea that Deckard was a replicant, and I liked the idea that he doesn't know it. And I always like the idea, like when you said, but what about the 4-year lifespan? My interpretation of that was that the 4-year lifespan was nothing more than something they had built into these things to kill them in 4 years, basically. And had they not done that, and prior models, like my interpretation was because they were concerned, the prior models didn't have that. And the 4-year lifespan was something they added to them at some point. Now, I always felt that Deckard was probably an earlier model who was not as strong as the new ones and never had the 4-year lifespan, and the only people who know he's a replicant are the ones that are sending him out to do their bidding. Kind of like exactly what they're doing to Kay here. But in this situation, he already knows he's a replicant. So, yeah, I mean, again, my feeling is that they have to... The secret that I guess we're supposed to get to is that replicants are really nothing more than people who have been doctored or tainted with by this corporation to just be blind servants and do what they're told. And sure, you can bump up their strength. Why not? Who cares? They're going to die anyway. If it's unhealthy for them to be this strong, it doesn't matter. We don't care. They're just slaves. But like I said, the only interpretation I can get is that replicants are just people. They're people who have been cloned to be something else, and that don't let the secret out that that's what it is. I mean, it's almost like a Soylent Green kind of a story, where don't let the masses know that these replicants who are really slaves are just people. They're just people like you and I, and that's why no one can figure out who's who. And that would have helped me a great deal. That would have made my enjoyment of this movie much more. That's how breaking this one little thing was to me. Because in my head, once I saw the bones, in my head, you know what I was thinking of? I was thinking of the 3D printer that you see in the opening credits of Westworld, showing them how they make the skin and everything like that. Right.
And I was like, okay, I can buy that conceit. I can buy that as a means of making it as human, more human than human. You start with the basic structure of a human and work your way out. But then to have it be like, no, there's some kind of form of DNA inside the system or something. I mean, how does it interpret the data that comes along? How do you get the hybrid of the two people? There's so much data that has to go together. I mean, my God, this isn't like unknown science. The biological way that people have children is pretty well known. Yeah, there's maybe one or two unknowns here and there, but nothing too much. It's very simple. Sperm hits the egg. One sperm manages to break the shell. Yay, you! And boom, the two combine. Blah blah blah. Biology. 9 months later, lots of pain, bleeding. I hate you, baby. What replicants? Really? It just seriously. It's hard. It's really, really hard for me. In fact, a friend of mine that I was talking with about it, that was like my big thing. Besides the tedium, besides the slowness of it, I just couldn't get past it. And once I couldn't get past that, everything else just didn't work for me.
Every civilization was built off the back of a disposable workforce. But I can only make so many.
And yet did work for me, because the rest of the movie was still beautiful. The way that the plot evolved, simple as it was, still kind of made sense. The thing is, if you could get your mind past the pregnant replicant things, the plot is actually not bad. It's not breaking any new grounds, but it's not bad.
Yeah, well, put it this way. I think the concept is fine, and like I said, I mean, I think this is the concept from the last film taken to the next step. Where now, like you said, now we have one that procreates. Oh my God! And like I said, if I can fall back on what I feel has to be I almost feel like the director is trying to lead you to it without taking you all the way there, and
which I appreciate. But sometimes you might need a little extra push.
If this is what they've got in mind, right? I agree with you. I mean, again, I would like to make a movie with no answers, with no conclusions. I don't know if that's it either, but. If they're doing it the way I'm interpreting it, then okay, then I'll give them some leeway and say okay, then in that case I'm on board. But again, I don't know that that's the case because they really haven't given you any concrete answers. But anyway, I also feel like aside from the plot, again, I mean the theory is good. Is it executed great? I don't know, because I found there was a lot of things that I thought were pretty coincidental. I mean, the fact that Kay's character finds the girl who at the end ends up being the one who is the actual daughter. Because again, they were leading us down the road to feel that Kay was going to be Harrison Ford's son.
Which by the way, I admit, got fooled by. In fact, I was annoyed by it because I was like, "Oh my god,
Agreed.
It's so obvious."
No. I felt exactly the same way. I felt like they had telegraphed that way too early. I thought like if that's what they're leading us towards, they've pretty much spilled the beans way too early. But even still, doing that last minute switcheroo and saying, "Oh no, it was really the girl." Okay, but Again, well, why did he, like, it was just a coincidence that he sort of runs into her early in the script to find something out. And even then, that scene, was this memory real? And she looks at it and she wells up or something, or she starts to cry and says, oh, this is real. This happened. Now, of course, he runs off. Damn it. Like this, why his reaction is what it is, I'm not sure either. You'd think he'd be happy about that if this was his real memory, but he runs off with the idea that it's his memory. She sits there knowing, I guess, that it's hers, but chooses not to say anything.
Right.
So it was her memories that were farmed out and plopped in other kids. Mm-hmm. So basically, any replicant could have found the horse and would have said, this was me.
Yeah, but I get the feeling, the way that they made it sound like that she was basically an outsourced memory builder for the Wallace Corporation, and that she makes every memory unique.
Yeah.
And it's just the world's largest coincidence that she happened to give the key memory to this guy who happens to be a Blade Runner.
Maybe. See, I interpret it a little differently. I just assume that 90% of, or half the Blade Runners running around, or half the replicants running around have this same memory. And that, anyone who would have shown up that day would have said, hey, I was here before.
That's part of their individuality. Wallace being the character, Jared Leto's Wallace being the character that he is, would want his creations to be individuals. He would want them to have their own separate set of memories, which I can understand.
See, now that's
it makes sense. That to me, as much as the pregnancy doesn't make sense to me, the idea that each replicant, unless it's a replicant of the same model type, like if there's like two Ks running around in the world, they probably would both have the same memory. But I think for each different model type, they would give different memories to.
Yeah, well, if that's the case, then I agree with you. That is a wild coincidence, and that doesn't really work for me. He goes to finds the girl who made the memory, who lived the memory, not made it really, just the one. Yeah, that is way too coincidental.
Yeah, very, very, very much so.
Yeah,
cute little twist. I appreciated it, but it just was way too coincidental.
Yeah, I agree. Other things about this film, by the way, there was I felt like the overall film I thought they took the bleakness to a different level too, by the way. The whole idea I thought it was fascinating when he comes home, like when Kay goes home for the first time, and of course it's like, hi honey, how are you doing? Already you kind of had the sense like, all right, there's nobody there. This is, and I thought this was like an interesting takeoff on like the Hey Siri and Hey Alexa stuff, you know what I mean?
Which it kind of was in the end.
That's how, yeah, right. It was exactly that, basically. It was sort of like, I felt like this was sort of a commentary on that, like this is where this is going to lead to. So I thought it was interesting, and then when she comes out and she's you can tell she's a hologram, I was like, all right, I mean, you kind of saw that coming. That whole storyline, though, like that sort of evolved into a whole sort of a subplot, which frankly I kind of thought was not necessary, and I felt like that had been done before. Like very much so. Like movies like Her was basically all about that. It was almost like I get that was sort of a story that was parallel to the whole replicant story in terms of like, we're all sort of we're starting to create these like synthetic artificial companions with our, like I said, our Alexas and our Siris or whatever. And but like I said, I thought that was kind of weird because, again, we saw it already.
Right. But in a weird way, I thought it was fascinating, too. I almost wished that had been more of the story than the story we actually got, in a weird way. Because I feel like that's where we're heading.
Well, yeah, that's true. But again, like I said, I feel like I've seen it done already, and I felt like this really didn't offer much more than I'd seen before. Even the part, by the way, this is also going to be a big coincidence as well. the scene where she brings the girl home, the hooker, who he met previously.
Right.
So they can kind of merge and make it like that she's actually having sex with him. Now,
which, by the way, I thought was a very well done scene, but we'll get to that in a minute.
It was okay, but again, they did it in Her, I thought. Didn't they do a same exact scene in that film?
I didn't see Her.
Oh,
so I don't know.
That's basically what that story is he falls in love with his operating system, and everybody's looking at him like he's a weirdo. Like Her is interesting because it's not as far into the future as Blade Runner. But already they're experimenting with the idea that he is talking to his operating system so much, was essentially like an Alexa kind of a device, but much more advanced, obviously, that can talk back and have conversations. And he's falling in love with it, so supposedly. And I think there's a scene where she actually brings a girl home and says, "I want you to pretend it's me," or something or other. So yeah, I felt like this was very derivative. So, and then to take it to that next level where he's trying to take it with him, and she's almost like his genuine girlfriend throughout this whole thing. Yeah, I mean, it was interesting to an extent, but again, I just felt like I saw it before, and
because you saw Her.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like there's other things that sort of take off on that as well. But
and it went to its logical end. You knew exactly how it was going to end the minute she said, "Take me with you." I was like, well, she's done.
Basically, yeah. But that also led us to another big coincidence. The hooker that she calls is the same one that someone had gone to before, saying follow him, track him, whatever. So, and again, when the hooker shows up, she says, like, your girl called me, right? And
that's not too much of a coincidence. They actually, when the woman with the one eye at the end of the movie tells them he was with Sapper. He was with Sapper when he died. Find out what he knows. And the three girls go over. One of them is the girl.
Right.
And as they're talking, the little holograph thing chimes at one point. So the Joy holograph was paying attention to the interaction between the two of them at the time. So it's not too out of the realm. The fact that she has, it's not too out of the realm. I'm gonna give that one a tiny bit of a slide. The fact that hologram then found this woman's number, called her up, paid her off, and brought her over, that's a little disturbing to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, it is, and I thought the scene of them kind of merging and was okay, I suppose.
I don't know. I found that if I had seen Her, I might have felt differently, but I found it kind of sweet.
See, well, you know what another part of what bugs me is, not bugs me, but one of the problems I have with the film is that at the end of the day, I felt like everyone in this film is either a replicant, or it was almost like who's left in this, and I assume the hooker is a replicant too, because they keep talking about the pleasure robots, whatever they kept calling them, the pleasure replicants. So I assume all the hookers are replicants.
Yes.
So yeah, Kay's a replicant. The hooker's a replicant. The AI girlfriend is not even human, not even a replicant. So it's almost like you're watching this whole world pan out, and you're saying, why do I care about these people anyway? Because like there's no humans left to save. Like in the first Blade Runner, it was a human population hunting down the few replicants that were there. In this one, I almost got the vibe like, who's not a replicant? Who's not artificial? So why am I even concerned about this world again?
I think most of the people in San Diego, they were human. I'm not 100% sure about Los Angeles anymore. I think Los Angeles is all replicants.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of felt like I didn't, unless I was not paying attention, I didn't feel that I saw a lot of the regular population walking around. You know, I felt like the only people you really saw in this one were the people who were integral to the plot. Whereas in Blade Runner, they made a point to show the cities and people walking around.
A vibrant world.
Yeah, like him just sitting there eating Chinese food and everybody's walking around, just doing their own thing. Here I felt like you never really saw who was just the regular people. So it was kind of where like I'm watching this film and I'm saying like 75-80% of the people in the cast are all replicants. I mean, my lead character is a replicant. The people he's after are replicants. Even I think Harrison Ford is a replicant. It's almost like
and speaking of Harrison Ford and things that aren't in it for a long period of time,
that he just shows up at the end. Well, I didn't mind that being the twist at the end, but yeah, he was sort of too.
I kind of feel like don't put him in the trailer, or at least don't make him a large part of the trailer. You definitely gave the people this idea that he was in it a lot more. I personally appreciated it. I was happy with it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I thought great, perfect. It's not really supposed to be about him. It's completely about him, but we didn't have to see him the entire time, and I thought it was a logical progression.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. But if you're going into this movie, you're thinking to yourself, oh boy, it's going to be Harrison Ford hooking up with Ryan Phillippe, fighting these evil replicants and stuff like that, and then he doesn't show up until the last 20 minutes.
Yeah. By the way, what did you think of the scene where they trotted out the Rachel double?
Okay, so there has been some really good things done with CGI in order to young characters. This is not an example of one of the good ones.
Are you saying that was Sean Young, that they made look younger?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yes.
It's funny you say that, because I'll tell you what, I was duped in a totally different way. I thought they actually got a different actress, and frankly, I thought it looked nothing like Sean Young, that I thought they didn't even bother to try to imply that it was the same person.
No, that's how terrible. You see, that's how terrible it was.
I was really trying to figure out what was going on there, because I thought it really didn't look like her. I thought they were just going to get a different actress, and they don't have to make it look exactly like her, because they're saying in the film that we made one just like her. Not exactly, but just like her. So yeah, if they're going to go to that trouble, why wouldn't they have gotten the eyes right? That was strange to me. Unless he just said that just to say that. I don't know. He
might have just said that to say that, but as they've made mention on several occasions that after the quote-unquote blackout, a lot of information got lost.
Right.
So they probably didn't have everything, and that all the memory disks were damaged and stuff like that. So, I mean, if you think about it, it's one detail that they got wrong, the green eyes.
You would think that would be a very, very big detail. If I'm drawing a picture of my girlfriend with crayons, the only thing I'll get right probably is the eye color.
Right. But, who knows how records are? Who knows? Yeah. I'm not going to give it too much. Besides, a part of me, I like the ambiguity of that scene. I like the ambiguity of whether or not it's true or not, just the way that he used it as a point to antagonize Wallace.
Yeah.
If it was true, it pissed Wallace off because he's a detail man and this detail was wrong. And if it was false, doesn't matter. He did it to piss him off, and it pissed him off anyway.
Right.
So I'm okay with that. But I felt that it was awful. It didn't. Yeah, okay, it was her. It sounded like her, but I just some people get it right, some people don't. I don't feel they got it right here.
Yeah, no, it was an awkward scene, and I kind of felt like, if anything, really was.
And it could have been a powerful scene because I felt like Ford was playing it really, really honestly. I thought it was some of the best acting that Ford has done in years.
Well, you see, now that's funny. It's funny you say that because I remember last week when you said you didn't buy the relationship between the two of them, you didn't buy the connection.
Right.
I remember I said to you, yeah, I don't really buy it either, but I just sort of took it as, just because two people have sex doesn't mean they're like these hardcore, madly in love lovers who are going to live together forever. So I thought the idea that now Harrison is playing it like this was his long lost love and everything, I thought that was a little too much, frankly. I really kind of, like I said, I didn't have a problem with the chemistry in the first one because I thought it was supposed to be. I mean, if she's a replicant, she's made to be like one of these, like, super duper hot looking secretaries who are super organized and smart or whatever. And he's this kind of rough and tumble guy. So I almost didn't feel the need for chemistry. So it didn't bother me there. Here, I thought him playing this up like this was his long lost, one and only love of his life. Now they're stretching it. Now they're asking me to buy something that they didn't seem. I didn't feel like I was being asked to play along in the first one necessarily. Here, I was being asked to play along with that, and I felt like I didn't see it that way.
Well, let's go with your idea that he's a replicant and the kind of vague way that Wallace implied that he may or may not be, which I dug. What if the thing that Wallace was implying was that Rachel was basically designed specifically for the replicant side of Decker.
Right.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that was supposed to be the connection that got them together. And also, I know this is going to sound like really freaking arrogant, but there's a different connection you get with somebody when they're the mother of your child. It can honestly change that connection.
No, listen, I ain't got no problem with that. First of all, what you said about when he implied that she was designed, that he was supposed to just like fall madly in love with her the second he saw her, that wasn't the vibe I got from the first one. The vibe I got from the first one was almost like, again, a classic Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall, kind of battle of wits in the beginning, and later on they sort of grow to feel for each other or whatever.
Right.
So when I saw the first one, I saw a guy who was probably a little put off by her. Like, listen, you're a replicant. I'm not even going to bother with you, or whatever. Then later on, something happens. I didn't get that he fell for her the second he saw her. Like as soon as he sees her, he lights up and is just madly in love. I didn't get that. So that implication here, I thought was a little forced. That implication, if they're trying for that. So to go to what you said, once she became the mother of his child, yeah, I have no problem with that. That idea, but that's not what he's saying. He said something much different. That he was supposed to fall in love with her the second he saw her, and that I just didn't buy.
It's hard to say. There's a lot of there's so much brilliance in this movie and so much inconsistency. It's like it's a schizophrenic display.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
It's disappointing. To me, in the end, it was disappointing. If people were to ask me, should I see this movie, I'm going to still tell them to see the movie because I still think visually it's beautiful, and I think that there is some good philosophical discussion to have, but I'm not adding it to my Blu-ray collection. I'll put it to you that way. And in fact, I gave it a 5 out of 10.
You know what? I had a hunch we were going to be very in line with this one. I gave it a 5 as well. And I said to myself, yeah, it was difficult. Again, I want to like this movie. I thought that they got a lot right, and in a lot of ways,
made a lot of improvements.
What's that?
Made a lot of improvements from the original with regards to actually having a plot that moved forward. It just wasn't a good plot.
Yeah, it wasn't a good plot. It wasn't as airtight as it should have been. And frankly, if you're going to sell me on something, then you frankly should really give me some answers. I hate to use this as a positive comparison, but I want that Sixth Sense moment where I see the twist and everything falls into place. If you're going to try to suggest that these replicants are really people with human DNA and human abilities, then you really should say so. And don't just leave it hanging, because if that's not the case, then nothing that I'm seeing makes any sense to me. The movie overall, again, I enjoyed a lot of the look and feel of it, but there was a lot of parts where I felt like it was just getting too bleak, just getting too sterile. And again, I know this is something that they do successfully in like the first Blade Runner, in Alien. Here I thought they were just really pouring on the cold, bleak, uncomfortableness. Again, no one is real. Everything is artificial and synthetic, and I'm getting to where
future.
Yeah, an ugly look at the future, to the point where, again, I'm not seeing any people in this. So it's sort of getting to where, like, one of the criticisms that Plinkett has of the prequels is that this big war is going on, but nothing really happens on Coruscant to show the effects of this war. Like, nobody seems to be bothered by it, really. I'm getting that from this, where why are we working so hard to have these replicants and to keep this all under control? I don't see the utopia that, that wants to remain blissfully ignorant of what's going on. So it was just, again, so it's like I see a lot of heavy stakes, but I'm not understanding what the big deal of it is. A lot of weird twists that I don't know, a lot of coincidences that I wasn't really on board for. Maybe I got to see it again. Another thing, though, by the way, and if I get through this review and I do not say this, Mary is going to murder me. I don't know if it was the theater I saw this in, but it was loud, really, really loud. By the time, by the climax, the music was just nothing but wah, wah. I mean, Mary was literally holding her ears. It was that loud in the theater, and like I said, I don't know if this was just my theater or if that's how it was in other places. But it was this barrage of the barrage of loudness, and I was like, all right already. So I mean, I honestly was getting to the point where I appreciate what this movie is trying to do. I appreciate what they're trying to tell me. But honestly, I was kind of looking at my watch, going like, "All right, I'm ready for it to be over." Like the long fight.
You're gonna need to find that quote.
Get over there.
Yeah, that's all I was saying too. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way: if I did watch this again to try to see if I missed anything, I wouldn't be looking forward to watching it again. I'm willing to give it a shot, but just on the level of pure enjoyment, no. I can't say that I really enjoyed watching this film.
Yeah. You know my Who Asked You, Pregnant Replicants, Who Asked You?
Mine, we talked about it already. I felt like it was the scene with the hooker. I felt like it was that backstory with his girlfriend, who is the AI in the apartment, brings the hooker home. And like I said, I felt like that. It's interesting, and it does have a place in this story, because that is sort of what the replicant story is about. But focus on the replicants and tell me your story. That, to me, had been done before. And when you see that movie, Her, it's an interesting movie, and it's worth watching. But you'll see what I'm talking about. It was very, very derivative of that. And again, I feel like we've sort of seen it before, where it's the robot who, I mean, the whole theme of Kay's story is, like Pinocchio. I'm a real boy. I want to be a real boy, and he's, is he getting excited at the possibility that he's maybe real? These are his real, and the girlfriend with the AI, same thing. She wants to be real, and again, I'm getting that, and I'm getting that was sort of a theme in the first one, but I feel like they're laying it on too thick with this one, and it just didn't work. So my Who Asked You is that hooker scene. I felt like that was too derivative, like I said.
Well, I like that scene, but for my consideration, however, I thought that Jared Leto's introduction as Wallace, where he walks in on the birth of his creation, I thought that scene was just freaking brilliant. I really, really did. I felt like I now, in one scene, in less than 3 minutes, I know this character, and it was well done.
Yeah,
I felt.
I'll agree with you there. I thought that was, the imagery there was very, very interesting, and it worked very well. Very, very well executed scene. For your consideration, and we talked about it already, I appreciated that they did not confirm nor deny that Deckard was a replicant. I like that they left that in the air.
Yeah. They did. I was wondering how they were going to handle it, and I'm kind of glad that he chose the path of, I don't want to say the path of least resistance. I thought it was the logical path, because I think that if you tried to definitive anything that had been implied in the first movie, I think it would have been a detriment to the movie. So by doing it this way, the power of the first movie stands.
Yeah, I agree with that. In fact, you could also even make the argument that the way they had done the story, again, we find bones, decayed bones that are replicant bones. So the fact that Harrison Ford is aging does not confirm or deny that he is a replicant. You think that the fact that he's old, I kind of thought going into this, the fact that he's like a 60, 70-year-old Harrison Ford, well, that proves that he wasn't a replicant because he didn't die early. No, it doesn't mean anything, because in this world, the replicants can live a long life, and the bodies will decay like people, and that's it.
By the way, I just want to add, a tiny little for your consideration. I look forward to the world where a jukebox will actually play a hologram of like Frank Sinatra. I like that. I'm looking forward to that.
I have a hunch we will see it.
I always told you, you're special.
Your story isn't over yet. There's still a page left.
It's a competently executed film. That, technically it's pretty marvelous to look at, a lot of parts. And, the theory on where we will be in the future, that kind of stuff I thought worked. But, but the overall effect was just a little too dour and bleak to me, and I didn't feel that it... But then again, you know what? When I saw the original Blade Runner when I was a kid, I wasn't crazy about it either, but as I grew up, I learned to love it. Maybe later on I'll revisit this film and I'll have a different feeling about it.
No, we're grown up, dude. This is the problem. The problem I think is that we're jaded. We've seen
that could be it too, yeah.
I really, because when I walked out of the movie, I actually texted one of my friends like, "Dude, I think I'm jaded. Yeah. I'm not feeling this movie,
right?
And and I want to feel this movie because there was so much beauty. The movie, we can talk about the plot to the cows come home about how wrong it is. The movie is beautiful, seriously beautiful. The physical look of the movie is art.
Yeah,
it's just empty art.
Agreed. Yeah.
But on that note,
my friend, another one in the tank.
Yes, indeed. Hey, what are we doing next week? Are we doing Stranger Things next week? Or is that the week after?
I think we might be. I'm not positive, actually.
Hold on. Let me look at the calendar. Yep, next week is Stranger Things. Oh shoot, I'm gonna have to rewatch it this week.
I guess so. Well, you know what? I have no problem with that. Great show. Yep. I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Sweet. All right. So yes, for Halloween month, we're going to be doing Stranger Things next week. The week after that, we'll be doing Thor. The week after that, The Dark World, and then Thor Ragnarok. We are 4 weeks away from Thor Ragnarok.
Time's going fast.
Indeed it is. But It was great discussing with you. I was a little worried that we were going to be off sync, which, frankly, I was kind of feeling like, oh boy, this will make for a great show. It's like, darn it, we're on sync.
My friend, I will see you here next week then.
See you in a week, my man.
Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode. And be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube and VidMe for spoiler-free reviews of new releases, as well as in-depth discussions of current and classic cinema. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can find our page at patreon.com. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are used for commentary and critique, and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.